Your life.
All right, I think you can take down the slide and we kick off. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to We Table It. We are going to give our guests a few minutes to join us, but we really are grateful for you and we welcome you and we thank you for being here and joining us today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. A little bit before we start, I can tell you about We Table It, who we are, and what we're about. So we are a platform that really talks about different social issues that affect people from all over the world. And we are made up of three hosts. So our hosts are myself, Valerie Siganga. We have Eno Voire Onukpo, who is a host with me. And we also have Dr. Osaro Aigbogun, who also is one of our hosts. Today's talk is being hosted by me, Valerie Siganga, and I'm so glad to have the opportunity to speak with you all about something that I am very passionate about, and also something that has been transformational and life-changing for me. So I welcome you all. I welcome you who are joining us on Zoom. Today, we're going to have a special guest give us some amazing insight. So that will come up in a little bit. And we're also working, and you can join us on Facebook, on our Facebook Live. The page is We Table It. And we're going to be live from now for the next hour. So you're all very, very welcome to our talk today and really look forward to getting a lot of insight. So before we kick off, this is my suggestion to you. This talk is really, really interesting. Apart from actually sharing a personal success story, giving you insight on sort of what worked for me and what could potentially work for you, this is the one talk where you want to have a pen and paper. And as we go through our talk today, anything that you find insightful, please take notes and take that down. At the end of the talk today, we're also going to share with you some resources so that if you want to get onto a highly successful personal finance journey, you have a place where you can begin. Because after all, who's not interested in personal finance and wealth creation? So make sure that you do have somewhere that you can take down some notes. And yes, we can get started. So welcome again to everybody who's with us. And last point, if you do have any questions or comments during the duration of the talk, you can put down your questions in the chat on Facebook. You can also put down the questions on the chat in Zoom, and we'll be happy to pause and answer them so that we can really address any concerns that you may have. All right, so let's jump into it. Today, the topic that we're going to be looking at and focusing on is on personal finance planning, right? How do you plan your personal finances? And why is it important to plan your personal finance for wealth creation? And I think to really kick off the topic, I will talk about my understanding of what personal finance is. So if you've been in business or worked in a company, most likely you have come across a budget. And a budget is basically a plan that is written out that tells you how it is you're going to be spending money on different things within the company based on what it is that you need to accomplish. Some goal that's going to give you a result that is one, that will be life-changing for you or that will change and make an impact in what it is that you're doing. Now, when we look at personal finance, it really, really is the same thing. Basically, I would say personal finance is what's happening with your money Do you know what's happening with your money? Are you in control of what's happening with your money? And that's why I think it's really important. So for me, my encounter with finances, and especially how it affects your life, is that this is one area that I think many people don't want to really look at. This is that area that when you look at it, it'll either fill you with, a little bit of joy or even a sense of fear because you really might not know what's going on or not have a real hold on what's happening with your personal finances. I mean, there are many times I've spoken to people and I've heard the term, I'm broke. I don't have enough money. I don't know where I'm going to get the money from. I don't earn enough. Um, phrases that take away your power when it comes to your finances. And the more we say these phrases, the smaller it is that we feel in our relationship with money. And so that's something that I'd like to address today. And to kick it off, I'm just going to give you a little bit of my experience when it comes to personal finances. So I've been in the workforce for, goodness, now I can say over a decade, close to 2 decades in the workforce, earning a salary, running a business, different ways it is that I've been earning money. And for the longest time, I've been one of those people who's lived from paycheck to paycheck. No matter how big or small my paycheck has been, it has been a journey of paycheck to paycheck. And that was very disempowering for me because in case anything happened that was out of the ordinary, I would be completely off balance and try and figure out how to resolve that. And so when I looked at money, money was frustrating. One of the things I used to tell myself a lot is I just need more money. If I had more money, I would be able to accomplish this dream. I would be able to get something. I would be able to solve a problem. And so that was my language when it came to how I was approaching money, how I was working with money, how I was spending money. I just felt a sense of lack and like I always needed more. And I would sit and ask myself, what more can I do to make money? So I had a job, and then I'd try and start a little income generating business on the side through a hobby. And then that money would come, and I'd say, okay, now this new money, I'm going to allocate you to something. And so I would do that quite a bit, but the result was always the same. No matter how much I was making, I was still living paycheck to paycheck. I was still living in a state of being broke. And because a lot of people around me were in the same state, I actually believed this is how money works. This is what happens with money. We just need to keep trying to earn more, whatever it is that we can do so that we can get what it is that we want. So I was completely powerless. And it just so happened, one of the things that I enjoyed doing is personal development and seeing how it is I can constantly improve my skills. And it was in one of those forums that I came across somebody who was a personal finance coach, and we were able to strike up a conversation. Now, at the time, I don't think I'd realized that there were people who did that for a living, actually guided you through your personal finances. If it came to personal finance, I was good at going onto YouTube and trying to find tips. I could read articles, but nothing was resonating. And so I came across a personal finance coach who promised me that we can walk a journey together and I could experience financial freedom. Now, why was this phrase financial freedom so powerful for me and why is it so important? You see, when I started my journey into personal finance planning, I thought of planning as budgeting. Like if I just create a budget, my finances will be sorted. It had not occurred to me that actually having control of my finances meant having freedom in my finances. And so that is what really got me into making sure that I got coaching in my personal finances. So at the beginning of the coaching, I was in a state. I was borrowing money from mobile loans constantly. And I had a mobile loan to pay off another mobile loan. So I had created this little loop of financial management for myself. My salary would be gone within the first 2 days of it entering my account. Just bills, things that I thought I needed out the window. And I was constantly strained, stressed, and worried. And I was in, I wouldn't say big debt, but I had many little debts that I was trying to pay off here and there. Was I even really trying to pay them off? I think I was sort of looking and seeing how I could best manage that situation because it was difficult to pay off since I was in the mindset of always being broke. And I remember starting my personal finance coaching and being told that very quickly, before I know it, I'm going to be fully out of debt. And not just out of debt, but I'm going to have savings and I'm also going to have a plan for my future that will leave me empowered and I will experience financial freedom. If only I followed the instructions that I was given. And so I was ready for that journey and jumped into it. So, what I'm going to go through with you today is how, in that journey, within less than 6 months, I was out of debt. I was no longer taking loans on mobile devices to pay other loans to fill in financial gaps. I was in control of my money. I understood where it was going. I understood where I could make wiser decisions, and I had started to make them. I was really in action when it came to my finances. And that was in 2022. Yes, in 2022. Before that, I had spent years in and out of mobile loans, trying to move from one day to the next, and constantly worried. Since then, I have not experienced that worry. I've not had to take a mobile loan ever again. I've been able to set up an emergency fund. I've really been able to take control of my finances such that I now have freedom. I don't have any experience of panic. I don't have any fear when it comes to money. And that's not to say that I've actually achieved what I would term as wealth, but it is to say that I have enough control that I know how I can get there. And that is what I want to share with you today. So, in the course of today, I'm going to introduce you to my personal finance coach as somebody who made a significant difference in my relationship with money, how I think about money, how I talk about money, and how I am with money. And his name is Solomon Kaesa. He is the CEO of My Money Pot here in Kenya. And I will ask him a few questions so that he can also share some insight with you. And his details will be given at the end of the talk for anybody who wants to reach out and really experience the power that comes from having financial freedom. And to start off, I'm going to talk about a blank canvas, right? So, what is a blank canvas? Normally, it is, if you're an artist, it would be canvas held onto some wood with no paint, no sketches, nothing, just a completely blank space. And so, when looking at finances, many times you might think, if I want to kick off, I need to start with a blank canvas. Let me begin at the beginning and see what it is that I can put into this canvas. I'd like you to look at it in a different way. Instead of a blank canvas, I'd like you to actually imagine a landscape. And why a landscape? A landscape means there's something that is already in existence on that canvas. So when you're thinking about a landscape, now I'd like you to think about your financial landscape. If you were to draw an image of your finances, what would that look like? What is in that landscape? On a landscape, you have hills, you have valleys, you have trees, you have lakes, you have a whole lot of different things that create the overall picture. And that's where you start when you're creating your personal finance plan. So when looking at the landscape, the first thing that I would recommend you do is actually look at your money right now, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and even the ugly that you're hiding away from yourself. Look at that too. So look at your current financial situation. What money do you have? Where is your money? Here in Kenya, we bank with our banks. We have what we call chamas, which are saving groups where people come together and save together. We have different financial instruments that you can bank with. We also have our mobile phones where you're able to put money away. We have cash, we have prepaid cards, we have credit cards. There's a whole range of different ways that we have access to our money. So your first step is you really need to look at all those different places where you have money and understand where the money is, number one. And once you've understood where the money is, the next thing is to understand how much money is there. All right. So, how much do you actually have in these different areas? So, first, let's see where your money is, how much. And please, this also includes your wallet where you have cash, where you might even have some coins. I mean, let's look at it all. Because when you're creating the picture of your finances, it's something that is for you and for you alone. So you can be really, really open and honest about what is happening with your money and how much that you have. And so once you've looked at how much that you have and you're in that space, then you're able to sort of move to the next step. So one of the things that I learned when looking at my finances is I had an idea of what the next step was. And ooh, that idea was not comfortable because I thought next, what I'm going to be looking at is where do I have gaps? How much do I owe? What is the negative side of my finances? But in reality, there's really no negativity to your finances. There is what is and what needs to be done. So here, when we start looking at what money we have, let's stay in that space for a little bit. And if you're taking down any points, please put that down, that we are not at any point going to be looking at anything that is negative when it comes to finances. So the next thing that we look at is what is our actual net worth? And I remember wondering about net worth because I thought in my mind, net worth was something that we used to assess celebrities, you know? We're told somebody like Bill Gates is the richest man in the world. He's worth 100 billion, as an example. We're told somebody else, Oprah Winfrey, the richest Black woman in the world, is worth 3.5 billion. So when I thought about net worth, I actually believed that it was something for people who were wealthy and who were rich. And that's how they assess how much money they have and where it is. But even in the space that I stand in now, I do have a net worth. And it's important to understand your net worth because it'll give you a benchmark in terms of where you want to get to and how comfortable you are in the space now. So your net worth really looks at you pulling in and looking at how much money you have available in cash in the different array of accounts that I've mentioned, and also looking at how much money you have available in your assets, because we all have different things that we own that have value. So that also adds up to your net worth. And then you get an idea of what you would actually be worth in terms of money. And what this means basically is my interpretation, if you were to cash out everything, this is how much money you would have. So first, look at what is your current financial situation, and next you look at your net worth. And so then we come into where it starts to get a little bit juicy and interesting. And here it's about our income and our expenses. How do we evaluate that? So if you're in Kenya, in Nigeria, I think for many of us who are in Africa, we don't rely on one source of income. Most likely, we have a primary source of income, and then we have secondary sources of income. So we've got multiple sources of income. And many times we devalue or underestimate our non-primary sources of income because the money that comes from there might be a little bit less than the primary source. But when you're painting your financial landscape, you need to look at everything. So next, think about your income and where it comes from. And when you're thinking about your income, I'd also like you to consider that your income includes gifts and money that people give you. So look at that income and see where it comes from, and make sure that you have an idea of where your money is coming from. And then the next part, which is normally the interesting, challenging, but the part that makes a big difference in terms of getting to financial freedom, is looking at your expenses. So you need to have an idea of where your money is actually going. And one of the beautiful things about working with a personal finance coach is that normally where you think your money is escaping and going is actually not necessarily where it is going. So when you look at your expenses, you need to look at maybe your bills and your needs, those things that you have to cater to every month. And you also need to look at your wants and desires. And from there, you'll get an idea of what do I need and what do I spend in terms of money that I need to spend. This is money that is necessary for survival. And your needs do not include, what would I say is not a need? I think we're all different. So I won't say what your needs should and should not include, because we all have different things that are important to us in life. But when you really begin to look at your needs, you will know what is a need and a want for you, and you'll be able to determine where your money is really sitting, whether it's somewhere that you need it to sit or it's sitting in somewhere that you desire. Okay. So before I really move into the next step, I'd like to invite any questions. You could raise your hand, and I'd like to really welcome my personal finance coach, Solomon Kaesa, and ask you, Solomon, if there's anything that you'd like to add on or comment on based on what I've shared so far. And to comment, I just request if you can go off mute and just give us anything you'd like to share.
Right. Good evening, and thank you, Valerie, for the glowing tribute, and congratulations on your journey. You've talked like the expert. And I would say probably what I could do, because for a coach, we don't talk much. You only give the signs. I could probably give just an insight as a to summarize what you've shared, and allow me to project just so that your viewers could have an
Yeah,
insight into what you're saying.
you should be able to share
Yeah.
your screen.
Okay. I'm disabled from sharing the screen.
Okay, one moment. All right, you should be able to share now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so just to give a little insight into what you've just shared, this is just a summary of personal finance and explaining, understanding your money, what it is, and where it is, and where it is going. Is it visible? Is the screen visible,
Yes, it's
Valerie?
visible. I can see your screen. Yes.
Right. There it is. All your income and all your expenses. That's what your personal finance would look like. So I would love us to look at it as a reservoir. So you see a reservoir as an inlet and some outlet, and that would give an insight on how your money pot should look like, or your purse. So just so that we get to see it clearer, that's how it would look like. Your money in, what you need to factor in is are you employed? Your salaries, your wages. Have you invested somewhere? You get some interest. or dividends. Then something important you shared. We normally get gifts or bonuses, and we want to get rid of the bonus as fast as they flow in. So that's true. It's a source of income and it's money in. Then outlet, probably the clarity would be differentiating between what you're calling your needs and wants. Then a better way of doing it is differentiating what is essential in terms of needs. Then what are your definite wants? Then whatever is not definite is discretionary, and that's what becomes now your wants. So I believe that now puts the picture a little bit clearer. Valerie?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for clarifying that.
yes,
And that was the word, your discretionary expenses, the ones which, if you choose not to spend, nothing will fall apart. So that's how I understand them.
sure. So what was the other question?
Yeah, thank you so much, Solomon. Thank you for sharing that.
All right.
So now I was going to jump into talking about goals. So I am coming right back to you as to give some insight on goals. Because that's one of the things that I realized was important when it came to finances and how I was establishing goals in the past, which was leaving me in a position where I felt like my goals could not be met. So as an idea, if you do a lot of reading on like the law of attraction and manifestation, we're really encouraged to set very lofty goals. So I could say I want to make $1 million this year. And if I just believe it and if I just imagine it, then it's going to happen somehow because of this energy of I want it that I'm putting out in the universe. So that's all well and good, but it's good also to really have an understanding of how you can meet those goals and how to work towards them. And so in my personal finances, one of the goals that I set was I wanted to get out of debt. I did not want to depend anymore on mobile loans. I did not want to owe anybody anything. I wanted all my bills to be paid up. I really wanted to get to that space. And when starting on the journey of financial freedom, according to the plan that I had put in place, or that how I thought it was going to occur, that plan would have taken me well into at least a year or more because of the way that I was looking and relating to my money. And so when I did my income and expenses evaluation, I became very clear on my fixed expenses, those things that needed to be spent every month, where there was no wiggle room to spend less. And there are those ones that needed to be spent every month, but there is, depending on how it is that I spend, there was some wiggle room for some savings, or even on the other side, they could go higher. So I began to understand how my expenses were working. And I started off with this goal of getting out of debt. And what began to happen for me when I became clear on my income and expenses is where my discretionary expenses were and how easy it was to spend them. So, for example, like Solomon mentioned, when you get a bonus, it's like, yay, I've gotten extra money. And it's easy to say, I have extra money. I'm going to go and spoil myself. Today is my day to go for a fancy dinner, or I'm going to go buy that dress that I've always wanted because unexpected money came in. And I learned that there's really no such thing as unexpected money. Often we have an inkling and knowledge that there's some money that's coming in. But then I began to look at how do I manage this money that is not attached to my monthly payslip, neither is it attached to any other income that I might be doing from additional work. And that money, I started learning the language of making sure I know where my money goes. And if I don't know where I'm going to spend that money, I don't have it planned, immediately put it into savings until such a time as I have a plan for that money. And it didn't matter whether this bonus or anything that was coming in addition was in Kenya shillings 200, which would be about $1.50, whether it was that much or whether it was in the league of, 20,000, which is over $100. It didn't matter how much the bonus was. If I did not have a clear plan on where this bonus was going to go, then immediately what I would do would be to save it and then make sure before I spend it, it's fulfilling something that's working towards my financial freedom. Okay. And now, when I say that, it can sound a little bit restrictive because I also had the mindset that in saving, what that means is that I can't have fun, right? Because if I want to accumulate money or save money and have financial freedom, then the joy of spending it on that steak or that outfit that I want to wear is taken away. But what I learned in terms of really painting that financial landscape is that there is space on my landscape for enjoyment, for entertainment, as long as I plan for it. And so that's what I began to do. So I began to plan for everything it is that I wanted to accomplish, including enjoying myself and having a good time. And when my money would come, I'd be able to make it sit in the different spaces where I wanted to spend. And the money that did not have somewhere to go went into my savings. And so, in a very short period of time, when I say I'd been struggling with especially mobile finance loans and those kinds of debts where money is easily accessible, nobody asks a question, you just ask for the loan in your phone and you get it. So, when I was coming out of that loop, after a quick period, I realized I'd actually set aside enough to come out of my mobile finance loans just by making sure the money that didn't have a direction was parked somewhere in savings until it did. And so when the time came for that money to have direction, it went into making sure I was no longer in debt with my mobile loans, making sure anywhere that I owed money, I was servicing that debt until those debts very quickly cleared up. So in terms of creating financial goals, the first thing is to know what it is that you're spending and where, and what you do with income and have a plan in quotes. Where do you put it until you can plan for it? And once I got control of that element of finances, is when it really began to occur to me that, hey, I can control my money. I'm not being controlled by my money. All right. And yes, thank you. I see somebody has a question. So I would ask Walter Siganga, please go ahead and share your question or your comment.
Hi, Valerie. You
Hi.
just said something that was interesting to me. Hi. You just said something that was interesting to me. By the way, I like this time because I don't have to get up at 4 a.m. to attend. It's only 8 a.m. over here now. So,
Oh,
but you said
great.
something, and that was retiring the loans, the mobile loans. What was the feeling when you retired those loans? I just like to hear something from you about that.
Oh, my goodness. The feeling for the first time, experiencing empowerment when it came to my money, because I no longer had to worry about on the 20 something of the month, I must pay off this loan, or I need to borrow another one to pay off the previous one. And I realized I don't need to depend on the loans. So there was a lot of relief. There was really, that's the first time I experienced freedom when it came to my finances, because it occurred to me that I can manage with what I have. I don't need to keep tapping into extra for any reason. I just needed to manage what was already in existence. So that freedom, that relief, that's exactly what I felt. And because I felt like that then, I knew I never wanted to go back to not feeling like that. Yes. Did you want to add
All right,
anything?
thank you.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
I was just curious.
Okay. Yes, so that was the first step in terms of really understanding what it feels like to be free with finances. And so the next step for me was setting goals. And this time, when I was setting my goals, I was not using the law of attraction as a barometer. It's not a bad law, but sometimes you can set a goal that does not seem achievable. But this time I was able to set short-term and long-term goals. So what did those look like? First, I looked at my goals in two different ways. Rather than just a goal of something that I desire, which I believe would make me happy, I started setting my goals based on urgency and importance. So I'd look at which of these goals, when I say that I want to achieve something with my finances, which is urgent, right? And how important is it for me to achieve that goal? If I am saving or putting money together to pay my child's school fees, which are due in 3 months, that is urgent and there's a clear timeline for that. And that is important because without reaching that goal, then I affect my child's ability to get education. So I started looking at goals in that way, what is urgent and what's important. And that's how I set my short-term and my long-term goals. So one of the first goals that I set in the short term was I needed to have money set aside, what we call an emergency fund, so that in case anything destabilizes me on my day-to-day living, I'm not worried that I'm unable to cover a bill. So what that meant is if something was to happen and I needed money today, I don't need to dip into the mobile loan. I don't need to call anybody. If it's something that is small and manageable, I can deal with it and I can move forward. And then I can start saving for more, larger things that to be manageable. But that's sort of where I started when I looked at a short-term goal. And then when I look at a long-term goal, it's something related to perhaps purchasing an asset, saving for my retirement, that sort of goal. How do I feed in what I have now to meet those goals? So that's how I started looking at goals when it came to my finances, urgency and importance, and what it means to have a short-term goal and a long-term goal. And when you understand where your income is coming from and where your expenses are going, then you begin to understand where it is that you may be spending that is not adding value to you. And it becomes easier to start putting money aside to meet those short-term goals and quickly cover them so that next, all you're focusing on is your long-term goals. Now, just to give a timeline, when it comes to short-term goals, for me, that's something that I'm always working on because I meet a short-term goal and a new one pops up. So it is something continuous. But I also feel empowered when it comes to my long-term goals, which no longer scare me. Even if I was to go the way that I'd mentioned earlier and say, I'd like to make $1 million this year, sorry, that would not scare me anymore. I'd be able to work towards it and achieve it. So that's what it means for me to work on my long-term and my short-term goals. Okay. So I'll ask Solomon if there's anything you'd like to add just on this section where I talked about goals.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. Yeah, and thank you for bringing up goal setting. Goal setting is actually like what gives you a direction of what it is you need to do with your money. And it's what makes you see exactly clearly what it is you want to achieve and whether you have enough resources. So probably what I would introduce at this point is talk about setting SMART goals. And we have the traditional description of what people call SMART, but for the sakes of making it resonate with the person, I always like adding some very, very self-touching or sensitive acronyms. maybe sensitive words to describe the acronym better. For example, conventional way of describing SMART, it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, or realistic. Then something that is time-bound. But I would say if you want to set a goal that's going to mean something for you, how about taking your S to be significant or even something special? Then in terms of, because you're dealing with money, you're speaking about special personal finance, how about even making the M speak about money and tell you whether you have enough money of it for you to achieve whatever goal you're, and what meaning does your goal have? Is it manageable? Something of the sort. Then on the A, you can ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? Yeah, it's achievable, but other than achievable and attainable, what else can you make of that A? Do you want to ace your goal, for instance? Then in terms of the R, you can ask yourself what rewards or results you're looking for. Then the T, we can alter it instead of just talking about the timelines. What about tasks, assigning tasks to your goal? And you find varying the meanings, personalizing the meaning, sort of puts a lot of clarity into it. And congrats, you're doing well for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, that pattern of looking at the SMART goals, because what you've reminded me, and I think what really works well with just the system of really looking at the planning is how personal it becomes. I think from, sort of looking at a lot of different ways to budget and methods that have been put in place on how you can create a budget. One of the things that I battled with was, how do I create a realistic budget? And I think for a long time, I was not creating the budget for myself. I was trying to create the budget based on a formula that would impress someone. I don't know who the someone is, but yeah, my finances were not based on my needs and what I wanted to achieve. They were based on formulas and patterns that other people had created for themselves that they thought would work for everyone. But it really, really is not the case. And in terms of setting those SMART goals, what happens is that you begin to create a realistic budget, one that is really just for you as a person. It is not to impress anyone. It is not to bring anything up or down. It really is realistic in terms of what works for you, what you want to achieve, and how you want to go about it. And I think that's something that's really important when you're looking at your finances and your personal finance planning. And just to touch a bit on our landscape, goodness, there's this term that I thought of when I thought of this landscape, and I asked myself, what is my financial color spectrum? When I think of colors, I have red, which is really, oh, this is dangerous. I need to deal with this. Green is got it, like just like a traffic light. And orange is something that needs to be worked on and be built. And I think those are some of the principles that are also used when we're doing our personal finance planning from that perspective, because then it makes it easy for you to see areas where things are not going as you would like from the numbers and the colors as well, and areas where things are really, really working. And so I'm just looking at time, and I think what I'll share with you now is a few tips on how I was able to really build up my emergency fund. Because as I'd mentioned earlier, this was a fund that was being put aside to deal with any shocks that may come along in my day-to-day, month-to-month journey with money. And I started with something very simple. So I'll mention one thing, and I'll ask that you consider doing something as simple as that. Now, earlier, when looking at my income and expenses, one of the things that I had done was allocate a specific amount to my monthly expenses that tend to be relatively fixed. They're a bit variable. But one of those expenses was my electricity. And I remember looking at the pattern of my bills and putting aside a certain amount to pay for my electricity every month. And that amount was budgeted from the income and the funds that I had in place. And so this is where looking at what happens when you don't have income to spend, where do you park it, comes in. So on certain months, I would budget for, let's say, as an example, I budget for $10 a month. And at the end of the month, my bill comes in and it's $8. So does that mean that I have $2 to spend and I'm excited? No, what that meant for me was I have made a saving here. Let me put it in savings because it had been planned for, but I've been able to actually not spend as much as I had planned for. And I did that consistently with an array of bills. And that meant that if the bill was ever more than the $10, then I did actually have the funds to meet any amount that was above what was budgeted. But it also meant that I was putting aside money into a fund that was consistently growing. So your emergency fund does not necessarily mean that you need to have a big pool of money that you're going to get, put it aside so that in case of something you have saved up to, 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses. But what it does mean is looking at, with the money that you already have, if you were to start today to try and build an emergency fund, no matter what amount that is, how is it that you can start? What is that first step that you can take? And something as simple as a bill that is below budget, you can take that money and start to put it aside. So there's always things that you can do with what you already have without feeling that you have to stretch yourself, that you have to find more. And what's interesting is you begin to create a pattern of behavior for yourself, where you actually start to seek out opportunities where you can make some savings, because you want this pot to grow from what it is that you already have. And it comes naturally. It does not feel strenuous. You do not feel like you're going without. You really have just redirected your mindset and your goals as to what it is that's going to give you that result that you're looking for. So rather than going out and buying that steak, that money for the steak dinner, which you may have come out of a bonus or a gift or something, can then be directed to saving towards something that will give you peace of mind and financial freedom. And so next, I'll just touch quickly on debt and how is it that we handle debt. So now nobody likes phone calls from people who you may owe money or who are seeking money from you. But one of the easiest ways to handle debt is to have a plan to do so and to communicate. And I think many things that break down when it comes to debt management and the feeling of being in debt is lack of communication and not knowing how you're going to pay the debt. So one of the first things that I went through when experiencing debt was coming up with a plan to sort out one short-term debt. That was in regards to mobile loans. But where I owed somebody money, I was able to look at that amount and say, what could I actually afford when it comes to clearing this debt? And let's say it would take me 3 or 4 months paying a certain installment. The thing was to have a conversation with the person and let them know, I'm going to pay you this money within this period of time. This is how I intend to do it. And normally you'll find that actually helps with clearing and making sure you're able to sort out that debt. Now, it's easy to say it when you're talking to a person, but you may wonder what happens when you're talking to a government institution or somebody who is intimidating in that respect. The same principle actually applies across the board. Being able to communicate, being clear yourself about how it is that you're going to pay something back, and most importantly, keeping to your timelines is what's going to give you financial freedom so that you're able to wake up one day and realize you don't have debt. And any debt where you can negotiate for some more time, I'd encourage anybody to go and do that with the intention of having a plan to pay that back. and also making sure that those debts that have high penalties, high interest rates, figure out how you can sort those ones out first, so that then you're not having all your money being sucked into paying out the supporting, I think I'll call them the supporting actors, who are within your debt. Okay. And final tip when it comes to debt, just start. Just, just start paying them off. However, whatever amount it is, just begin. Okay. And so I'll take these final 10 minutes to tap into wealth creation, right? And how financial freedom and wealth creation really come hand in hand. So I'm encouraged. I am taking 2024 as my year to really achieve wealth creation. I used 2022 and 2023 to discover the path to financial freedom, whereby I no longer worry about money and where it's coming from. I worry more or spend more energy looking at plans and looking at strategies and going into action when it comes to making sure I earn the money that I need. So I feel so much more empowered when it comes to my finances. I know when to stop spending and how to do it in a way that I don't feel like I am in lack. And I'm able to really make decisions that are comfortable with me, that I'm proud of, and that now is setting me up for the next part of my journey, which is wealth creation. Okay. So what happens, or what are the steps that I'm taking in terms of wealth creation? Well, there are a few that I'm starting on. Remember, I said just start with what you have and grow from there, right? You don't need a massive big idea from anywhere. You can simply start with what you have. So one of the things that I'd recommend from my perspective, because I am a low risk investor, I'm still discovering the world of investment. I've heard good stories, I've had bad stories. So I tend to be quite tentative when it comes into exploring investment. But one of the things that I have done and that I have set up here is what we call a money market fund. So it's got different names in different countries, but basically, it's a low risk fund where you're able to save money, and every month the money is able to earn a small amount of interest, which then you can reinvest into the fund, you can keep adding, and it can continue growing. And I found this to be a good place to put savings, because in a savings account, the money doesn't grow as quickly as when you have a money market account. So it's important to note that a money market account is something that should be for a short-term investment or savings. But it is a simple way to get started with passive income. And that passive income will come in the little interest that you earn every month that you're able to reinvest and use to continue to grow your funds. So that's where it is that I have begun. A second way is looking at how can you increase or create streams of passive income, right? And luckily, we're in an era where technology and the internet really makes this possible. With minimum effort, you can actually capitalize on your talents and create streams of passive income. These could be, in a way, writing ebooks and having them online. Once it's there forever, and you're able to get sales from it. If you're offering services, you can create content for those services, have that available for sale in the form of courses. If you're into the side hustle culture, which is something that we're very good at here in Kenya, you can create a side hustle, something that doesn't take a lot of time, but is a service that other people would be willing to pay for and offer that. But look and see how it is that you can find additional sources of income so that you're not just reliant on mainly your primary source. And then using that, you begin to save this money that may come in as, I'm going to call it extra, but which if you did not spend it, your life would not fall apart. So you can begin to save that money. And another way that you can get onto the path of achieving wealth creation is continuous learning. You need to be learning all the time. Trends in finances are going up and down. Do you know what are the latest trends in the market right now. As an example, as the dollar gets stronger, I think in African markets, what we're experiencing is our currency is weakening against the dollar. So what does that mean for you if you wanted to grow your finances? I'd say if you have clients who are working internationally, charge them in dollars, because what will happen is that when you receive the funds, you will have a gain from the interest and you'd be able to save that. Okay. Sorry, not the interest, the difference in the Forex values. You'd be able to save that. So pay attention to financial trends, understand what is happening in the market and where it is that there are opportunities that you can tap into. Okay. And next, I'll just mention quickly that on this journey, it sounds amazing when you start, but you need to be ready for setbacks because they do happen, right? So when you have a setback, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that there's something that you've done wrong. It doesn't mean that everything is going to fall apart and you're back to zero. It simply means that you need to look at what it is in terms of a step that you can take to move ahead to come out of the setback situation. So it may mean a simple change in direction. And that also means that whenever you would receive a victory, the best thing that you can do is really celebrate that victory. So for me, coming out of my mobile debt, I was so excited. I celebrated that victory. I took myself out and I said, yes, I've been able to do this and I'm ready for the next. So learn how to celebrate yourself and the small victories. Oh, great. Thank you. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, share a comment, would be happy to answer them. What I will ask is if you have any parting shots or anything that you'd like to share. Solomon, anything you'd like to share? Yes, I see a question also coming from Walter Siganga. So maybe you can ask the question or comment, and then we'll come to you, Solomon.
I'll just make a very quick comment because of what you just said, Val, about compounding. I look on the screen and I'm sure there are other people on YouTube, but the young people, I think this is a message that we should take to young people. Even like, as you said, if you're taking $10 a month and putting it away when you're 25, and letting it compound, like you're saying in a money market account, by the time you reach 40, that's a considerable amount of money. So if we can urge our young people, the young cousins and so on, to start saving early and consistently, I think that will be helpful.
I agree, 100% agree. And Solomon, would you like to add on the final points?
Yeah, so far so good. And I agree with Walter. Compound interest, what's best with the young people? Because you have a lot of time to experiment. If you're low risk, go where there is compound interest, it is your friend. Because in as much as about 7 to 8 years, your investment will be double, if not more. Yeah, especially in Kenya. The rates in Kenya are not that bad. So I've seen people putting in investments and on the 7th year, they have doubled the value what they invested. So that helps you fight what is called inflation. And over the last 2 years, inflation has really eaten into our finances. And you can imagine if somebody doesn't have an emergency fund or is not even well diversified or has not even attempted to invest or even save, it's an uphill task. So it's a good pick, the power of compound interest. Then the other pick would be on know your risk profile or your risk tolerance. What is it you can take on board? Yeah, that for now. For more, I'm sure we can be joining you together in later editions.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Solomon. Thank you very much. So, just to really sort of bring today to a conclusion, I will ask my co-hosts who are both here, Eno and Osaro, if there's anything, any comment that you'd like to share or anything that you'd like to add. Eno, I can see you're here. I think Osaro may have dropped off. But do you have any comments or anything that you'd like to add on? Okay, if Eno has any comments, she will jump in and add them on. So for my parting shot, what I would say is the journey to personal finance planning is not one that you should walk alone. It's one I think that is really best to walk with a coach. Take some time, focus on your finances, even if it's for a few months, because that coaching will have an impact that will last with you for years. So I'd recommend anybody who's looking to experience financial freedom and start on the journey of wealth creation to walk hand in hand with a personal finance coach who will be able to give you solutions and ideas on what would work really best for you. So at the end of this talk, we will share the details on how you can get in touch with Solomon. I see he's already shared in our group chat here, and we'll also share those details with you on Facebook. And what I will ask is for you to like and subscribe to our pages. So at We Table It, we have a talk every Saturday. For 3 Saturdays, they are hosted by either myself, Eno, and Dr. Saro on different topics. And then we have one Saturday where you will get the benefit of having all 3 of us really having a passionate discussion about an issue that we find important. And it just so happens that our next talk will be taking place next week on Saturday at the same time as today, which is, I think it's 2 p.m. GMT. And what we'll be talking about is leadership. We have had lots of discussions on leadership in Africa, leadership in Asia, leadership in America. And we look at our leaders and we look at, who they are, how old they are, what they're bringing to the table. And we wanted to discuss how when are the youth of today going to become leaders of tomorrow? We really want to see how many youthful leaders we had, and we want to discuss what leadership looks like and how it can be improved for countries. So that is going to be a very rich, interesting discussion. And I'm hoping that you're able to join us with that discussion next week, because you're very welcome. If you'd like to have a look at the discussion, our previous discussion that was held 2 weeks ago, that was on bigamy in marriage. Very interesting. We had a legal representative come and give us insight on what that really meant. So you can also go back and listen to that. It was hosted by Eno. And all of our talks are available on our Facebook page at We Table It. So in case you miss a live talk, it's not a problem. You can always go back and watch what it is that we discuss. So for today, I'd like to thank all of you for coming into the talk today. I'd like to thank those of you who have joined us on Facebook Live. And we really do appreciate your discussion, your questions, your comments, your participation with us. If there's something you'd like us to chat about, let us know. And we really do look forward to more interactions with you. And so in case anybody has any further comments, you can share them now. I'll just check and see if any hands go up. All right. So I'll conclude that there's no further comments, but thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much, Solomon, for joining us and sharing your insights. I'm sure they're going to make a big difference for people who are looking for support when it comes to their personal finances. And yes, I'd like to leave you all with that. So I wish you a very blessed afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, and a good weekend ahead. And thank you for joining us today at We Table It. Okay. Have a great day.
Thank you.